All right, let's dive into 2 Nephi chapter 23. It's a vision of Babylon's future.
You know, from the prophet Isaiah.
Yeah.
And
it's a pretty intense one.
it is. He started off.
Especially for those living the high life in Babylon.
Right.
You know, they're known for their impressive architecture and...
Yes, all that grandeur and luxury. Exactly.
Bustling life.
Uh-huh.
But Isaiah doesn't sugarcoat anything.
No, he doesn't. He comes right out and says...
Like, look, judgment's coming.
In verse 4, a tumultuous noise of the kingdoms of nations gathered together.
You know, it's like...
That's powerful imagery right there.
It's like he's saying the Lord of Hosts. Like,
Yeah, the Lord of Hosts.
is getting ready for a showdown.
Yes, a major showdown.
And Babylon, you're
right in the middle of it.
You're right in the crosshairs.
Yeah.
And the imagery he uses to describe this coming day of the Lord in verses 5 through 9.
Intense.
Intense, yeah.
Day of wrath, fierce anger.
Yeah, even the strongest hands
They tremble.
will tremble, hearts melting with fear.
Yeah.
I mean, you can almost feel the chaos
The terror of the
he's
king.
depicting.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting, in verses 10 and 13, it seems like it's not just...
It's cosmic.
It's not just...
justly destruction.
It's not just an earthly destruction.
Yeah.
He talks about the heavens being shaken, the sun becoming dark, the moon refusing to give its light.
It's like the whole cosmos.
He's mirroring what's happening on Earth.
Yeah.
It's amazing. It's like the entire universe is reflecting.
Right. It's not just some random event.
It's not random at all. It's a direct consequence.
Isaiah makes it clear. Verse 11.
Verse 11. And I will punish the world for their evil, and the wicked for their iniquity. And I will cause the arrogance of the proud to cease, and will lay low the haughtiness of the terrible.
Sobering, isn't it?
It is.
It just makes you think.
Yeah.
It's directed at ancient Babylon, but,
But are we any different today?
you know, are we doing the same
Are we
thing
setting ourselves up
in different ways?
for a similar fall?
That's the question, right?
It is. And yet,
Amidst all this judgment and destruction, there's this verse.
this one verse that,
Yeah, that just stands out. Verse 12.
verse 12, yeah. And I will make a man more precious than fine gold, even a man than the golden wedge of Ophir.
That's powerful.
So powerful because it's like,
even when he's giving out judgment, God still values humanity above everything.
material wealth, earthly power, doesn't matter.
It pales in comparison.
The worth of a human soul is
The worth of a human soul.
paramount.
Yes.
Like a
glimmer of hope.
glimmer of hope, even in the midst of
Yeah.
all this talk of judgment.
Right.
But going back to Babylon, it's fate.
Yes. Isaiah.
Isaiah lays it out pretty clearly.
It doesn't hold back.
Yeah, in those verses 19 through 22.
19 through 22. Babylon, the glory of kingdoms, completely uninhabitable.
It's going to become a place
A wasteland.
where nomads won't even pitch their tents.
Yeah, overrun with wild animal.
It's like the ultimate symbol of
Desolation.
utter desolation. And then he compares it to Sodom and Gomorrah.
Oh, yeah, in verse 19.
It really hits home because those cities,
Notorious for their wickedness.
met a terrifying end.
Yeah.
It's like he's saying, Babylon, you're on the same path.
Yeah, you're heading down the same path, and it's not going to be pretty.
The outcome is going to be just as devastating.
It's a powerful image.
That-
But even in this prophecy of judgment,
we see.
he reminds us of God's mercy.
Yeah.
Verse 23, for I will destroy her speedily. Yea, for I will be merciful unto my people, but the wicked shall perish.
So while judgment's a reality,
It's not the end.
it's not the end.
There's still mercy.
God's mercy is still there,
Especially for those who seek it.
especially for those who seek it. And that makes you wonder, right,
It does, yeah.
what does it even mean
What does it mean to be
to be counted among
God's people?
Yeah.
What sets those who receive his mercy apart from?
those who face judgment?
It's a profound question.
It is
And maybe the answer lies in how we live our lives, our values, our
the
choices,
choices we make every single day.
every single day,
It's about how we treat each other.
how we respond to those in need.
It's all connected.
It is.
And what's interesting? Throughout this whole prophecy, there's so much emphasis on
Pride, the arrogance.
the downfall of Babylon. Yeah.
Verse 11, laying low the haughtiness of the terrible.
Yeah.
And then later in verse 14, he describes them scattering like
Like frightened animals?
frightened animals. They shall every man turn to his own people, he says, and flee every one into his own land.
Imagine that. The once mighty Babylonians, reduced to fear and vulnerability.
Their pride, which once made them feel invincible.
Yeah, it's now the very thing that's making them vulnerable
And afraid.
and afraid.
It's a powerful lesson.
about the dangers of pride
Dangers of pride.
and the importance of humility.
You know, when we let pride take over,
We lose sight of what really matters.
yeah, we become blind to our own weaknesses. We think we can do it all ourselves.
We start to think we don't need anyone.
But we're all vulnerable.
We all need God's grace.
Absolutely, and guidance.
Yeah. And when we humble ourselves,
Yeah,
acknowledge our need for Him,
that's...
that's when we open ourselves
We open ourselves.
to His blessings.
That's the key.
It's like maybe that's the key takeaway from this whole prophecy.
Yeah, it's not just about the fall of a city or an empire.
It's about us.
It's about us.
It's about the pride in our own lives.
And choosing humility and righteousness
Choosing humility.
instead of arrogance.
It's a powerful message.
A timeless message.
And it's as relevant today
As it was then.
as it was thousands of years ago.
Absolutely. That question we ended on about what it means to be God's people.
Yeah, it really sticks with you, doesn't it?
It does. It makes you think, you know.
Is it just about saying the right prayers? Going through the motions?
Is it just about appearances?
Or is it something deeper?
I think it's got to be something more.
I think Isaiah gives us some clues, right?
Yeah.
Look at what he condemns in 2 Nephi chapter 23.
The pride, the arrogance.
All that wickedness that led to Babylon's downfall,
Yeah.
it's the opposite of
Those qualities that define God's people.
humility,
Righteousness, love. It's
Yeah.
about an inward transformation.
not just outward actions.
Right. A genuine commitment to aligning our lives,
Yeah, with God's principles,
living by His principles.
seeking justice,
Walking humbly.
walking humbly with our Creator,
Exactly. It's about recognizing
recognizing our imperfections,
and relying on God's grace.
God's grace to guide us.
Every step of the way.
Speaking of walking humbly, there's this powerful image in verse 14.
Oh, yeah.
Isaiah describes the Babylonians scattering.
They shall be as the chased roe, and as a sheep that no man taketh up. And they shall every man turn to his own people, and flee every one into his own land.
Can you imagine that?
Those proud Babylonians
Reduced to
running like frightened animals.
Yeah, desperate for refuge.
It's incredible, that arrogance and self-sufficiency.
That defined them,
Yeah,
replaced with,
helplessness, vulnerability.
because they put their trust
in the wrong things.
worldly power.
Forgetting the source of true strength.
It's humbling,
Yeah.
very humbling.
Makes you think, what are we clinging to in our own lives?
What are we relying on that might not be so secure?
What are security blankets that might just be illusions?
It's easy to get caught up, in today's world.
all those messages about success,
The pursuit of wealth.
independence.
Yeah, we can lose sight of
What truly matters?
what really matters.
Now, if Isaiah's prophecy isn't just about the fall of Babylon,
What's the universal message?
what's the message for us today?
I think it's about the consequences of pride.
And the power of humility?
Yeah, that transformation that humility brings.
That's a call to examine our hearts.
Root out any arrogance.
Wickedness?
Seek righteousness.
It's about realizing that true strength doesn't come from our own efforts. It comes from surrendering to God's will.
Relying on His grace.
His grace.
And no matter how far we've strayed,
God's mercy is always there
always available.
for those who truly repent.
Seek His forgiveness.
His love knows no bounds.
His grace is enough for us.
He wants to redeem us
restore us.
to peace and wholeness,
It's a message of hope
redemption.
that speaks to all of us.
Yeah, that longing for meaning and purpose,
In a world that can feel,
chaotic, uncertain,
it's about knowing that we're not alone
that God is with us,
as we face those uncertainties.
guiding us, leading us.
And something that strikes me
Yeah.
is the contrast.
Between the fate of the wicked and God's people,
Babylon faces desolation.
but those who are with God,
Unpromised mercy.
deliverance.
Yeah, it's right there in verse 23.
For I will destroy her speedily. Yeah, for I will be merciful unto my people, but the wicked shall perish.
It's a powerful reminder that
Aligning ourselves with God.
is essential.
Yeah, seeking His will.
Living according to His teachings. It matters. It brings us back to that question.
What does it mean to be God's people?
Is it just a label?
A religious affiliation?
Or is there something more?
It goes beyond that.
It's deeper than that.
It's a transformation of the heart.
A genuine desire to know God.
To live in a way that reflects His love.
Aligning our will with His,
Seeking His guidance.
letting His love shape everything we do.
Our thoughts, our words, our actions.
Like a lifelong journey,
And drawing closer to God.
becoming more like Him,
Recognizing our need for Him.
letting go of our pride
Embracing humility.
so we can receive His grace.
Experience His love.
And in that surrender,
We find true freedom.
lasting peace. Reading through this prophecy, It's easy to get caught up in those images of judgment and destruction, but there's this thread of hope throughout it all.
Yeah, absolutely. Even in those dark moments, you see God's mercy and love shining through.
And while we see the consequences of wickedness, we also see this emphasis on God's desire to redeem, to offer a path back to righteousness.
Yeah, it's a beautiful tapestry of justice and mercy woven together.
And talking about justice, it's interesting how Isaiah describes the Medes in verse 17, the ones who will conquer Babylon.
Yeah, he says, "For I will stir up the Medes against them, which shall not regard silver, and as for gold, they shall not delight in it."
It's almost like Babylon's wealth, their greed won't save them.
It really highlights that true wealth isn't about material possessions. It's about aligning our lives with God's will, putting those spiritual values first.
There's this sense that God's judgment isn't just random. It's rooted in righteousness.
Exactly. Those who exploit others, who turn away from his teachings.
They will ultimately face the consequences.
Yeah, and that's a crucial point, especially today. We see so much emphasis on material success, ambition.
It's easy to lose sight of love, compassion, integrity, those values that really matter.
It's a sobering reminder that our choices have consequences, not just for ourselves, but for everyone around us.
And as we go through life facing those challenges and temptations,
We got to keep our focus on what's truly important.
and that's where the power of Isaiah's prophecy comes in. It's not just a history lesson. It speaks to us today.
Yeah, it's a timeless message urging us to examine our hearts, to repent, to seek God's guidance.
So as we wrap up our look at this prophecy, let's remember that it's a call to action for all of us.
To choose humility over pride, love over hate, justice over greed.
It's about embracing those values that align with God's will, seeking his mercy, living a life that reflects his love.
And in doing so, we find that purpose, that meaning, knowing that we're not alone, that God is with us.
Guiding our steps, leading us toward a future filled with his peace and grace. If you'd like to continue exploring these ideas with us, be sure to follow our podcast and subscribe for more. Till then.